Welcome back. Tim's busting
Welcome
out the
back.
dance moves again.
Awesome song, I don't know who selected that, but I like it. Welcome back. Typically we're on Friday, but today, Thursday, before Memorial Day. I know some people are probably on the road tomorrow, so we just wanted to kick it off a day early. But we'll go around the horn guest-wise or host-wise. I'm Tim Schnurr, Fort Mesa. Dylan, you want to go next? Dylan, we got no audio from you, so I'll leave. Jesse, I want to skip a turn here.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Hopefully you're listening to this in the car, not watching it, but my name is Jesse Miller. I'm with Power PSA Consulting. I help MSPs build, repair, and scale security programs. Kick it over to Brian.
Yeah, I'm Brian Gillette. I have Feel Good MSP. We're an end-to-end sales process development program specifically for MSPs. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Jesse, I know you had a couple thoughts. You wanted to kick this off. I had a couple slides, just really talking about continuing our conversation from, I think it was 4 weeks ago. We last had Brian on the show, talking specifically about, really resonating with the customer, building trust, right? Like, what are some of the things we can do specifically with cybersecurity? I had a couple slides, but I think the first thing you wanted to talk about was like understanding the customer, right? Like, is this an ICP, right? Ideal customer profile as you talk to them? You can look at their website, but why don't you take that one? So
So we were talking a little bit in the green room, and Brian was bringing up how when you talk to a client, you need to know the client that you're talking to and kind of where they're at, and structure your message appropriately. It's not one size fits all. And just saw Brian put a post on LinkedIn, I think it was today, talking about psychographics. So really excited for him to dig into that. And last time we got together, we didn't get a chance to go as deep as we wanted to on sales techniques. So we're going to try and let Brian really do some talking here and educate you all a little bit. So to get to your point, Tim, I really see it. There's three types of MSP, or three types of clients in terms of maturity that an MSP is going to talk to. One is the small business, two is the mid-market, and three is the enterprise. And now size does not always factor in for everything there, because you could have a small business that's very advanced and has a lot of needs and has mid-size requirements. But bottom line, small business is someone you're going to have to educate on security. They might not know why they need security. They might not know what security they need. They don't really have an idea. They're coming into it very green. Two, you talk about mid-sized companies who know they need security. They're more sophisticated, right? They might have a security lead role and they kind of know what they want, but they need help really structuring their program and staying on track. And then third, you have enterprise or larger clients who have security team and they really want to use an MSP to pick off pieces of risk and kind of compartmentalize risk, whether that's providing vulnerability management or just chunks of risk off of the CISO's plate. And so that's kind of how I see it, but I want to kick it over to Brian and let him kind of run with his approaches on those different levels of client.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. I know, like you said, I laid out a flight of, like, here's an amuse-bouche about how you sell cyber last month, but we didn't really have time to get into some of the hyper specifics.
Right.
I'm really curious to hear, are we able to see comments and stuff today if people throw them in?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. I would love if anybody's on and you have a really, really hard sales question, like this is the sales nut I can't crack, this is the deal I'm on. That's like our favorite thing, right, guys? Like bring us like real-time stuff. And I'd be happy to prioritize like using any of those questions to contextualize some of what we're discussing. But you mentioned psychographics. I think it's a good place to start because I'm going to introduce some concepts that are probably going to reveal a lot of areas of improvement. That's a really nice way of saying that, like, when I do my job well, when an MSP brings me in, it's usually because I end up creating work, for them. Because if our entire sales philosophy is just something that like one vendor that sells agents gave us, it's like, they gave you a strategy to help them sell more agents. They didn't necessarily give you a strategy to actually secure your customers' environments holistically. I have a question here. I'm just going to check out. Oh, all the help you can get. Great. Well, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the channel and your test with growing the engineering practice. Okay, well, you're in good company. So psychographics are the immeasurable, the intangible qualities that make up someone's frame of mind, how your prospect sees the world. The difference between a psychographic and a demographic is that a demographic you can search in Sales Navigator, right? That's the easiest way to differentiate. Is this a demographic or a psychographic? Well, it's a demographic. It's a search parameter in Sales Navigator. How many users do they have? How long they've been in business? How much they do in revenue? What's their vertical? What's their geography? Things like that, right? A psychographic is like people who have a priority in security, but there's no search parameter for that in Zoom Info, right? So how do we attract the appropriate psychographics and repel the inappropriate psychographics when we're looking for new customers? Well, we use our messaging to polarize people who think like we want them to think and people who don't. It's all going to be in our messaging, which is by far the most overlooked sales weapon that you have, specifically in cybersecurity. I recently just started. Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn, and I want to be more and more engaged on LinkedIn, not just engaged on Tech Tribe, where I comment all the time. But I started going through my Sales Navigator, being like, look, I'm gonna engage with some MSP's content that I think is great, and I'm gonna like give some, Jesse, you're like such a good example of that. I'm gonna give some meaningful, cool feedback, write some great comments. It took me like 30 minutes to find 10 posts that I actually wanted to comment on. Because, and I mean this with love to the channel, the content is so stupid. So many people are posting about cybersecurity.
So I want to stop examples. Are you really like, just throw some out there? Like they're talking about their services directly, and it doesn't like, there's no.
It's like, okay, like
meaning to it, or go ahead.
VR startup looking for Series B technology ? Like, okay, the accounting firm that needs some cybersecurity controls is not going to read that and go, you know what this article makes me want to do? Pay my MSP more money per seat, because it's something that we find interesting. But like, I have bad news for you. Actually, it's kind of good news. The rest of the world is nothing like the IT community, right? Like what we find interesting and what your prospect finds interesting are completely different things. So,
and you're not resonating contextually at all, right? Like there's no,
right. It's like,
there's no light that's going off. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody cares. Like they deeply are disinterested in that kind of content. Jesse, were you going to throw something out there on this too?
Well, I was going to say, so somebody just asked, is this event live? It absolutely is live.
Clearly.
So yes, no beeps for swears. So try not to swear, or swear away. So I was going to say, I agree. And I'm a huge fan of polarizing, right? Getting to clients that work with you, that you both like, think similarly on things. But how do you do that? I know I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post every day. I try to engage meaningfully with posts. I try to put out content that educates, but is LinkedIn the only way to do that? I know not or other suggestions that people can get proactive messaging out rather than just doing outbound and, hit the phones and get 100 calls every day type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on, there's a million different ways, but we have to figure out is sort of the smallest viable audience is where you want to start, right? Like Seth Godin's famous for that. Like, what is this minimum viable audience that you can get for this message? If you're writing a message for everybody, then nobody is going to read it. Like, something for everybody is something for nobody. So if you're trying to make content that will be attractive to your MSP clients to buy more cyber, but also to people who don't know you, that content is going to do neither. So you have to ask yourself, who is this for? Before you make content, who am I posting this for?
Right.
The answer can't be SMBs in Toronto. That's not a good enough answer.
Yeah.
You're playing right into the narrative that MSPs are becoming a commodity.
Yep.
But we don't sell fidget spinners. We sell very specific solutions for very specific problems that very specific people have. Doing that work is what's going to make you a preeminent option in an increasingly competitive and commoditized industry.
Yeah, and
So,
I think it's hard to do. You know, for people that are technical to try and all of a sudden take a left turn and get into the psychology of their client. What are their wants? What are their fears? What do they like? What kind of lights up their lighthouse type of thing. This is all new things that are hard to do, and so we as people we kind of shy away from things that we're not good at, right?
right. Yes, and I mean, it's especially difficult for us because we're used to dealing with machines. I might have even talked about this last month, that like a machine, you can put in a prompt and you put in an executable, it will execute. It will do exactly what you told it to do. It won't do anything other than exactly what you told it to do. And sometimes we don't even realize, but we think of our prospects like machines. We think, okay, I need leads, so I will put in a lead gen executable and then I will get leads out. But that's just not true because people are illogical. The only logical thing in the universe is computers. But people don't make logical decisions. They don't buy logically. They don't logically assess and rationally make appropriately sized investments to mitigate liabilities. They don't do any of that.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out, what do they want? How is what I sell relevant to this person? And how can I help them achieve ultimately what they're trying to achieve in life through the lens of selling my cybersecurity controls? So this sounds really sort of amorphous and conceptual, but there's a plan. Like in the Feel Good MSP, I just worked on this today with a cohort. We have a 7-page ideal customer profile worksheet, and we break down demographics as number one, which is most people stop there and they think, okay, I've done my ICP because I picked a vertical and I know a user count, things like that. That's 1/3, if that, maybe a quarter of your true ideal customer profile. Because then you need psychographics. And what we want to know is, what is this person afraid of? Not what do we want them to be afraid of, or what are we telling them they should be afraid of?
Yeah.
What are they actually afraid of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just threw up that slide quickly, Brian. We actually share these decks beforehand just to kind of throw some ideas around. And, obviously I think we're resonating there on like really getting understanding that like the fears are basically is going to focus their attention, right?
Right. But so much of our content is us telling them what they're afraid of.
Right. Right.
I'll give you a case in point right now. I told you I was going to probably create a lot of work for you if you're watching this webinar. I want you to really think about this. Put your empathy hat on, okay? Do you think a CEO of a multi-million-dollar business is ever actually trying to go to sleep at night? She can't get to bed. She cannot go to sleep. She's taking melatonin. She's not getting there because she's up at night going, oh God, we're only running file backup, but we don't have image backup. So our God, we might be down for 3 hours instead of 1 hour. Oh man, I don't have an active backup. What if my IT guy's out of the office? Do you think she's losing sleep over backup? No, she's not. She has decided to become ignorant to those things so that she can sleep through her night. But all of our content is like, we help you sleep at night. Dude, they don't need your help to sleep at night. They're not up at night worried about this. You're up at night worried about this. The whole point of hiring you is because they don't want to think about this. That's why we have jobs. So the idea behind that message is, let's get a visual, emotional trigger that we can tether back to the problem that we solve, which is the appropriate line of thinking. I just think it's like 20 years out of date.
Yeah.
I don't think CEOs are up at night trying to get to sleep. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
They got pills for that. They've solved that problem. But I'm sure that there are real problems that they are having. There's pains they're experiencing. Those things are probably relevant. Like maybe the new generation of entry-level employees are a lot less controls or policy minded. Maybe they know that the new generation that they're hiring is statistically less likely to follow any procedures that they put in their code of conduct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that feels a little bit more relevant. What if we could tether a real problem they have, like the labor market, right, to a problem that we can solve or a problem that's relevant to us? Now, all of a sudden, we can actually make a true emotional connection in a way that they can visualize themselves when they read your story. I always say, when you write an ad, and if it's a written ad, you want your prospect to be playing a movie in their head where they're the main character and your ad is happening to them.
Right.
And if it's a problem that they don't relate to, but we're telling them that they relate to, it sounds like aliens who are observing Earth from really far away and making estimations as to what humans are experiencing. That's what we sound like, you know?
Yep.
And you're never going to move the needle with that.
Throw some good examples out, Brian, in terms of, just give me more examples, good and bad, that you've seen. You mentioned one before on, outside of context, outside of, right, like it's not, you're in their blinders and you're just spitting out noise. So,
yeah. So the quintessential example to me of a visual motif that I think we need to abandon is the like hyper tech, all blue and black server room, angular thing. It's a very powerful image that to us evokes technology. But we're not really trying to sell them our process. What we're trying to sell them is our results. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So what we need to ask ourselves is, rather than saying, what processes can I explain to my prospect to get them to buy my product? We should say, what outcomes will my processes deliver for them? And then what will their life be like when they have the outcomes? I would rather see a business owner on a boat with a flute of champagne being like, that's a guy who got his cyber figured out. If you did that instead of the guy in the hoodie like this, are you secure, with the matrix behind him?
You read my mind.
You see what I mean? Like, that looks like something that an AI artist generated to be like, talk about cybersecurity. But it's so contrived. And at this point, it's just so overdone. They've seen that picture so many times. Don't show them pictures of how you're going to solve their problem. Yeah. Show them pictures of what their life is going to be like when they offload all their problems to you.
That's right. Yeah, and I think
I've seen some good examples of that, Brian. Like, as you said, like everything's working. Click, automate this, and my life's easier, and right, like as opposed to the past, right, like the before after to some degree. Mm-hmm. So I think there are some versions of that. I think the problem with MSPs though is their customers are just so diverse. So I guess if they could contextualize or narrow it down into their core customer focus, like whether it's industry or something, what solutions can they bring that will help them specifically in their challenges in their day-to-day, right? So
yeah.
What so kind of getting to application here, let's take an idea of an MSP who has been doing the 20-person MSP contracts, small customers, not any real focus ICP. What should they do if they want to start getting an ICP together, dabbling in psychographics, and start leveling up to a mid-market type of clientele? What are some practical steps that they can take in your estimation?
Yeah, great. This is exactly what I do. This is the step-by-step. If I were still running an MSP, this is what I would be doing right now. Draft an email that says something to the effect of, hey, you've been my customer for blank number of years. We've loved working with you. I have a favor to ask you. I don't have a sale. and I don't have a gift card for you. This is something that would really benefit me as your IT partner. Can you get on this Zoom call? Here's a link for 15 minutes. I will ask you 8 non-technical, very easy questions, and then we're done. I need to ask you a couple questions about some cybersecurity stuff, and I promise it's not a secret sales pitch. In your own verbs, do that. Then what you're going to do is you're going to run a mini customer development interview, CDI. And those questions are going to be completely 100% unbiased, non-judgmental questions where you get the actual answers to questions like, number one, when I say cybersecurity, tell me what comes to your mind. And get your customer to just say things and go, okay, give me like 5 words, stream of consciousness. They don't even have to matter. Just tell me what you see in your brain when I say cybersecurity. Okay, when I say ransomware, what do you think about? Okay, now, if I were to say, in your opinion, what is going the best in your business right now? Not technical, just in your business. What is happening that's the best? Now, not asking you to get vulnerable here, too vulnerable, but can you help me, Mr. Customer? What is the number one area of growth you see in your business right now? Now, do you think, regardless of whether we have an answer to this, we don't give them any answers. We don't say any statements on this interview. We just ask questions. And we say, do you see a world where a partner like me could help you with that area, even if it's sales or hiring or whatever? And if yes, why? If no, why? And don't answer it. Just go, thank you. This is super helpful. I really appreciate it. Okay, here's a $10 Starbucks gift card for your troubles. Goodbye. Do that.
I think it's
times.
interesting. Yeah. Why? So just, I think my natural reaction, Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, is I would focus on like bottlenecks, and you're focusing on positives and strengths. Brian, is there a reason does that resonate does that get them more excited, right? Like to talk about the things that are going good instead of the things that are going bad?
Yes, because everybody in the world's favorite thing to talk about is themselves. And every business owner's favorite thing to do is talk about their successes to someone. But what we're going to do is like, look, when we build an ICP and we have fears, and I have fears, goals, pains, and then I call it my aspirations. I call it the who box. Who does this person want to become? What status are they trying to achieve in life? Because I want to tether me to that, right? I want to help them become who they want to become. That's the best way to sell anything. But what you find is that goals and pains are antonyms, and fears and aspirations are antonyms. All of their goals are they're just trying to get out of the pain that they're feeling. But they're not always very reticent to go, here's all the pain I'm feeling. Because when they hear a salesperson say, tell me about your pains, they see a wolf licking his chops. Mm-hmm. Because we've conditioned them through the adversarial sales complex that this is going to come back to bite them in the ass if they tell us the truth. But if I know that everything they're trying to achieve is just because they're trying to get away from everything they're trying to avoid, I can then infer the things they're trying to avoid based off the things they're trying to achieve. So this is a psychological method of sort of delving or inferring pains that people are having without them having to go there. That's one of the reasons why. But the other reason is if we're trying to help a dream customer understand what we can help them achieve, we need to know what our customers are achieving by working with us. And we need to get more specific than just grow your business, less headache, more time and money. Time and money is not a good value prop because it's what everybody offers. It has to be more specific than time and money.
I think you're overstating that there. I think time and money is beyond what most MSPs are offering. I think most of them are just offering commodity IT, right? So, I mean, you're actually offering, like where you're going right now, you're delving into that like deep understanding of the customer, their business flows, their data flows, like, as you said, the successes, and like walk me through. I love that approach. Like you said, like what makes them excited and talk. They're obviously, everyone loves talking about their good days and strengths and their wins, right? So, So keep going down that road. Like I said, I think even for many of our partners, that's a leap, right? Because they're offering desktop support and mobile device management, MDM or something like that, right? So like they're not going beyond that, like, oh, I don't know what these guys do, right? Like I'm just trying to provide that service, even though there's all these opportunities, right? Like adjacent, right, to those IT services, right? Assistance with software, assistance building software, assistance with, like automating things and pulling in documents, right? So I think you're onto that, Brian. Like in terms of really kind of digging, understanding them, because then everything's going to be easier. So
yeah, this is the I just had this conversation on a podcast interview or something like a few days ago. Like the future of marketing is empathy. The most important word right now to the success of your business, whether you like it or not, is empathy. If people do not think that you understand them, they will not think that you know how to help them.
I think you saying that in the beginning.
Dylan, you're a little faint, but
Is this
try it
better?
again. A little bit better. We're just getting you clicking that. So
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, kind of. Well, I'll turn up our dials. Go for it, Dylan.
Shoot
Well,
for it.
What I was going to say is,
There we go.
for me, you resonated right off the bat, Brian, with empathy. If we cannot connect with our clients in any aspect of the world, then we're already off target. We need to be able to understand them as individuals, and taking that unique perspective for each client is really what separates us from being able to bring them value and just selling them something. That's truly how I feel about the situation.
Yeah. Nice to have you online, Dylan. Sorry we couldn't hear you before.
That's
I'd love to
okay,
get
no
some of your takes on this stuff too. But yeah, to sort of circle back to the customer development interview, what we were talking about, ask them some of those simple questions. But here is the thing you must keep in mind. If you remember anything from Brian today, I want you to remember this. Your goal is not to be right on the CDI. Your goal, you're not seeking to be right. You are seeking to understand. It does not matter if what they say is right or wrong or smart or dumb. It literally is meaningless. What matters is that you understand their perspective, because perception is reality in marketing and in value, right? So if I buy, like I wear a designer watch. I don't have it on today. I don't wear a designer watch because I need to know what time it is. I wear a designer watch because I want people to know that I can afford a designer watch. Does it look good? Sure. So does the knockoff. Looks the same. But the value I get out of being a person who buys designer watches is worth paying 10 times more than a Timex watch with the same quartz, with the same exact little motor in it. It's the same. You see what I'm saying? So the value of my designer watch is not so that I know what time it is. That's right. But luxury is a massive brand, and it's not, it's never the practical value on the surface level. What is my point? My point is that you don't get to decide what value they find in your services. They have to decide that you are worth paying for. And so if they are willing to pay for you because it checks a box and it gets their wife off their ass, and that's worth $189 a seat, then that's what you're selling. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That gets it over the finish line. And you don't go, no, don't buy it for that reason. Buy it for this, my 21 point checklist, and all my stack is better, superior. Like, no, it's not. It's the same as everybody else's, but it doesn't matter, because the reason they're buying this is up to them. So the reason I'm telling you that is, if they see value in like you helping them in some way that you didn't see coming, don't correct them. Just go, thank you so much. That's really insightful. It helps me a lot. Here's your Starbucks gift card. Best of luck. Click. Then do that 10 more times.
How many businesses, Brian, actually know the difference between one MSP's offering or stack or whatever between the other. Like they don't actually, sit down and like do a matrix and be like, oh, this guy's got that's,
Right.
firewall and VPN or whatever, right? Like, so
Yes. I would argue that it's probably 99% don't know, and I would even say 99% don't care.
yeah, think
I don't
fair.
care what brand of lift my mechanic uses to get underneath my car. I just want to know how much is the oil change? When will my car be done? How you do it, I literally don't care. If you wave a magic wand over my car and then put a new sticker on it, I got what I wanted out of my oil change. I didn't do my oil change because because there's dirt in my oil. Like I did it because I'm supposed to. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it goes back to the watch, right? So luxury watches, the commercials for those don't say our watches tell time better than any other watches. They are precise down to the second because of the finely tuned parts, right? They show a lavish lifestyle that you can either attain or project by having their product. And so that's the comparison that you're doing when you get into speeds and feeds and you're talking sales as an MSP and marketing. So
100%. 100%. We are not like, I call it sausage making when we sell our product by telling everybody everything that's in it. You don't sell sausage by letting people tour your sausage factory. You sell sausage by asking people if they're hungry. And when they go, what's in the sausage? And you go, just a little bit of the American dream. And they go, hell yeah. And they buy it. Because you see what I'm saying? Because like the 4th of July has co-opted the bratwurst. It's not even an American food. But we feel more American when we eat a non-American food on our American little birthday. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think it also brings up the point, Brian, that the question why, like how we ask that, why we ask that, we need to know why the client's there. I feel like sometimes a lot of people are just so sunk into getting their pitch across and, trying to get the sausages in front of their face, but that's, it's not always the appropriate way to do this.
Right. So that's the first starter point. I know, Jesse, you wanted me to be more practical. And so the first starter point is if you're going, yeah, Brian, but how do I know what they want? You ask them what they want. You say, what does cybersecurity mean? What does managed services even mean? What does technology, what emotions come to mind? Point to this wall of emojis. Pick the one that you feel when I say this word. And then go, okay, do you have an answer why? No problem. You run those. You get your ideal customer profiles to give you context about how your product makes them feel, what they think you're going to help them do, regardless of whether or not it's true. Now we have this actual empathy-based perspective. And that is going to be the cornerstone of our ideal customer profile, psychographic. Like, what does this person want? Well, they want to be more successful. Why? So that they can retire earlier. Why? So they can spend more time golfing. Interesting. So if I had an ad that said, Dave is super secure, or Dave has 45-point cybersecurity on his network, and we see a picture of Dave just like nailing a ball off the tee with a cigar hanging out the corner of his mouth. And the ad just says, Dale runs a multi-million-dollar business. Dale doesn't care at all about cybersecurity because we care about it for him. That would be a much more compelling ad than, are you secure with the matrix guy and the hood over the head? And we're not even using fear. We're using the opposite of fear. We're using aspiration, which is what I call aspirational qualifier. We tell people we're only going to be a good fit for you if you have this goal, or this goal, not this pain, or this pain. And then you get them to opt in to your qualifying customer because you've just listed verbatim the things that they want, which you copied and transcribed from the customer development interviews that you ran yesterday. with the guy who looked exactly like this guy, with his competitor.
Yep.
See what I mean? So it's not pulling it out of thin air. It's not from ChatGPT. Please don't do that. It's not going to work. Ask your customer don't ask a robot what your customer wants. Ask your customer what your customer wants.
Brian, I think we've been kind of going back and forth between prospective customers and current customers. And some of these slides we put out, right, I think this resonates with what you just said. Like, show them, like, have them talk about like playing golf, right? Or like, what do they want to do? Like, they want to sell the business and retire, right? Like, they want to. And when it comes to cybersecurity, I guess I'm going with the risk or fear of that, or like losing that or protecting it a little bit here. But you're still getting, I think we're still getting to the same place at the end, right? Like,
yes,
let them talk, right? Like, as you said, put 7 questions in front of them with a Starbucks gift card at the end, and don't bias them, right? Like, don't interject. Get the most out of it you can, right? Because like everything you're getting out of that, like, you can build upon, right? Like you're capturing those next steps. So that was a thought there. So
yeah, I mean, for sure. Like we do have to contextualize the success with the very real risk of failure. Like the threat of loss is real, and I think it would be what's the word I'm looking for? Like poor stewardship of us as the IT defenders to not let them know about the very real risk of loss in business. So maybe we have one slide where Doug is playing golf, and the next slide, Doug is eating a frozen burrito in his office at 9 o'clock at night, desperately trying to find all the data that he just lost, or like redigitizing old paper files because he lost all of his stuff.
Right.
Yeah, showing them like, the classic Donald Miller story brand, which is like a really great place to start. If you're on level 1 of copywriting, or if you're on level 0 of copywriting, building a story brand by Donald Miller is a great place. It's like here, a hero meets a guide who gives them a plan, who helps them achieve success and avoid failure. So we want to establish stakes. What happens if you win? What happens if you lose? But my point is that, like, us telling them what winning looks like is stupid. And I think similarly, us telling them what losing looks like is just as ineffective, because they don't have any emotional connection to our horror story for them. But if in that CDI, we ask some questions that said something like, what would happen to you? Like, how would your business be affected if you couldn't access Sage for 7 days? And then sit silently for 3 minutes and make them answer it. And they go, well, it would probably lose some time. And then you go, lose some time, and then sit there and shut up. And they go, yeah, well, I mean, I guess the staff would probably, well, maybe they'd be able to do something, but I don't even know if our sales guys would be able to send any orders out. We wouldn't know. We wouldn't have any of the information from our suppliers. Okay, so you couldn't do anything. You just basically did what they said, and then you sit there silently. You make them tell you what failure looks like in their verbiage from them going to the movies. Now they're the star of a tragedy movie in their head, and they're seeing it, watching it unfold. You're not manipulating them. You're being their therapist. Now you're a sales therapist. You're making them confront what would happen if they don't take the proper controls. And then at the end of the CDI, maybe you start with the negatives and then you end with the positives. But like, I do this on a sales call, and when they've done that and adequately sort of squirmed, we go, what do you want to do? And then I make them tell me that they should buy my product. But because they have been in the driver's seat this whole time, but they understand the stakes in a very visceral level, rather than a vendor told me what their stakes were and I regurgitated it. But
how do you tie the value back there, Brian, between their disaster and like them illustrating that, right? Like, how do you you're like, oh, you should buy my product, but how do you, obviously your product has to do something about that, right? Like, or change the future, right? So like, how do you make that connection?
Yeah. Most of the time what we find is that customers, when you when a customer is, or a prospect or a customer is forced to contemplate risk, they are going to sort of reach for the nearest object when they're drowning. So usually they'll tie the value in for you to the effect of like, well, I mean, yeah, and I guess we need to get that done. I mean, is that the kind of thing that you guys do? Well, and how would that's, I guess that's why we're talking, right? Like normally
yeah, it's like finally found someone who understands my problem, right? And you're the closest one to it, and you're it sounds like you've got something. So right, like I'll give you latitude here. Like it's going to take me all this effort and time and investment in finding someone who actually understands my problem.
Yes, that's exactly it. This is a more articulate way. This is a shorter way of saying what I'm trying to say. I told you the future of marketing is empathy. Okay. The future of authority is empathy, not expertise. Expertise is cheap because robots can now do everything, right? Expertise is officially cheap. Now that ChatGPT can write a better book than me, having author behind my name, it doesn't carry as much clout. And in 3 years, the author is not going to have the same clout that it did 5 years ago, right? Okay, IT experts are a dime a dozen. There's experts everywhere. The problem isn't that they haven't found an expert. The problem is that they haven't found somebody that they want to do business with. But when we demonstrate empathy, they backfill that empathy with authority. Like empathy creates authority. Empathy creates authority. When you understand their problem, the only reason you're even here is because you know how to solve it, right? Because you're not going to go, wow, all that sounds tough. Well, best of luck. Goodbye.
Yeah,
obviously, as you go, okay, well, you say, well, here's my process. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, absolutely. Like you said, I think that's really powerful, right? Like there's a bunch of things that are getting replaced and commoditized by, some form of robot or automation or ChatGPT, like you said. So what is that disruption? Like what's the fallout? And I think you nailed it right there with authority over, expertise. So
yeah, that's it. I mean, why there are so many people who go to ChatGPT to just have conversations. Did you know this? It's like very, very common that people just talk to ChatGPT all the time. So I think what's missing from IT is like real, true humanity. The ironic part is that so many of us are trying to differentiate ourselves by saying we're people forward technology, or we don't support technology, we support people. But then they have an old robot voice that answers their IVR, and but none of their processes are human, and none of their sales process is human. But they say that they're going to be human. But like if you are actually human to them, you will stand out in this industry. If you have the skills and the patience to actually listen and understand their problem, and instead of when they say, yeah, well, we're having some backup issues, instead of licking your chops and going, ooh, well, tell me a little bit more about that pain, I say things like, God, that sounds like a headache. And they go, yeah, it is a headache because we're paying for this whole thing and it's not working. And I go, well, what do you mean it's not working? And I just talk to them like a human being. And then at the end of the day, I'm the only person in a lineup of MSPs who actually ask them meaningful questions about their experience. So who are they going to pick? The guy with the quote unquote best stack? Oh man, they don't know what's in our stack. They don't care what your certifications are. Those are the things they'll use later to rationally justify the emotional decision that they made to hire the guy that they like the most.
Yeah, if you don't know, someone presenting you 10 words and they're in a foreign language, and you're like, are those 10 words different than those 10 words? We're not going to know. So like, as you said, I think the stack comparison is, you've got to resonate. Jesse, what are your thoughts? Still having a lag there? Are your audio good?
Yeah, I don't know. How's it working? Can you guys hear me? Still
perfect.
It's working. All right, good. Yeah. All sorts of technical issues today. So I love this discussion. I'm sure that people are just like, wow, I've been doing everything wrong for this whole time. So that's marketing, right? So we let's say we successfully use those CDIs, right? We develop a good marketing approach. We've got leads. We're having meetings now. In the sales process, then how do you carry this forward? That same approach, and you talked about asking them questions, right? How does that then translate into getting into negotiations, moving the deal to a win, right? What does that look like in the process?
Yeah,
We're talking
absolutely.
bottom funnel stuff here. Yeah,
Great question. And the big thing is it's going to change based off of which tier of customer. We talked about that at the beginning.
right.
Well, I'm going to ask them questions early on. I sell kind of in reverse. So I don't like find a pain and then I send them a product, and then I send them a proposal, and then I explain the proposal later when they don't get it. I basically do all the selling first and include what I call deal structuring questions in the discovery phase. So when we talk about, they go, yeah, this makes sense. We need some whatever. Maybe they raise their hand on the marketing side. Now we need to start getting in there. I'm going to mix discovery questions and deal structuring questions in to say things like, well, I mean, are you really in a position to invest in cybersecurity? And I'm going to say that. That's like a takeaway version of what's your budget?
Right.
Are you even in a position to invest in cybersecurity? And they go, well, not really. And we go, okay, then should I really spend 2 hours on a proposal? And that's how I sell cyber to somebody who has an awareness, but they are used to this like fake take and escape buyer process where they lie to you and then they get all your information and then they run away.
Right.
So I reverse the fake take and escape by making them answer all the accountability questions up front, and I don't give them the product. And I will oftentimes make them verbally agree to at least the concept of the price before I tell them what the product is.
Yeah, I love the social concepts or the social contract concept for that kind of stuff, right? So that's great. You're going that way. Like, yeah, if I can do this and that's a win, right? Would you agree that that's kind of what you want? And they say, well, yes, I agree that that's all your problems. Okay, now we can go move into that next part. So that's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, that's
pretty
called the
pretty radical. Yeah, pretty radical concept, right? Like, so Brian, do you share your prices up front then? Like, do you put them on your website? Like, how far do you go, right? Like,
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't put them on the website. I think that if a customer was trustworthy with your price, they would have already hired a good MSP.
Right.
But there's a reason that they don't have a good MSP. It's probably because they beat down some other MSP into selling them a half-baked solution to discount, and now they're paying the price. They're suffering the consequences of like an incomplete stack, probably, right? If they were fine with price, they probably wouldn't need to keep vetting new MSPs. So for that reason, I don't think it's even fair to them, because like they don't have the information they need to buy the product that they need. So I'm not going to put it on the website. I don't believe in that. I have an article on MSP Growth Hacks about multi-phase price selling is what I call it. I break price into little bites, and that's going to change based off of the maturity of the customer. And if I'm in the enterprise space, I'm probably going to do some ballparks on discovery call. If I'm in the SMB space, I'm probably going to be like, the first meeting, they need to know it's a fixed monthly price, and I get them to swallow that pill. The second meeting, I'm going to explain that it's either by device or by user or both, and then maybe some bookends of how that works, depending on, but I'm early enough in the discovery process that it's justified for me to have a wide range, because I'm like, I don't know everything you need yet. It's probably going to be somewhere between $25 and $125 per seat or whatever for our cyber component. And then when they go, that's a lot of money, we go, yeah. Oh, by the way, I usually tell people I'm going to be the most expensive.
you did range it though, so you gave yourself a little bit of wiggle.
Yeah,
right?
and they range
like
it.
25 to 100. Yeah.
When they go, well, that's too much money, and I go, what do you mean? Well, they go, well, our budget is 1,000. Now they give you, but now all of a sudden they have a firm number, and I go, okay. So if I gave you a proposal that's $1,007, there's just no, if that's what it comes to, it's not even worth sending it to you, right? Well, we'd want to see it, but why? It's above your budget.
Right.
Yeah.
This is how I sell. Look, feel good close is called the feel good close because if selling isn't fun, it's because you're losing. It's because you're doing it wrong. And we've been on the back end of this codependent, toxic exchange dynamic for so long where we work really hard and they lie. And then sometimes we win 10% of the time. Sometimes.
What was
Like,
the
I don't
fake
wanna do that.
take and what? Something like that?
Fake take and escape. That's the buyer's process.
Okay.
You know, they go, we're not sure. How much does it cost? I'll get back to you. If you're in that vicious cycle, I need you to hear me, MSPs. If you're in that cycle, I need you to hear me say this. It's not because your city is a special city and it's specially cheap. It's not because you picked the wrong vertical. It's because buyers have been trained to do this because of habitually predatory sales practice. Because there's a bunch of vendors out there telling you to shock the shit out of them. And so they've been scarred and traumatized by all the other competitors who came in with deep web scans and didn't really even know what they were doing. They were just trying to scare people. So they've been trained to lie to you. So don't take it personal. You just, instead of making statements, ask questions. And then they can't take because they're not getting your information. So I break price in pieces. I will integrate price into the deal and I will integrate deal structuring in. The if I could, would you is what Jesse talked about. There's another great little sales move here. When somebody brings you an objection and you don't know what to say early on, remember these 3 words: feel, felt, found. Dylan, are you familiar with the feel, felt, found?
No, I'm not.
So it's like a tried and true way of reversing an objection that you don't, when you're like, I don't know the answer to this yet, but I have to start talking. So, okay, I'm going to start with the feel, felt, found. Thank you for telling me that. I understand how you feel. A client I worked with just a couple of months ago felt the exact same way when we were in this context. Here's what they found was that once we implemented blank, they were able to blank. It's a way of empathizing and reversing.
Yep, you're resonating with them right off the bat. You might not have the answer up front, but we're still resonating with them, and that's what's important.
Yes. Another great one. When they bring you an objection, this will stop them in their tracks. I've done this countless times. When I hear an objection, specifically an objection I don't know the answer to, I say this: I am so glad you asked me that question. And then I say, I wish more people ask questions like this.
How many times do you hear people say, that's a great question, right? Like that's kind of like that's the cheap and easy version of
yeah, that's a great question. Right. But great question, it looks like, I don't know, it looks like a move, but if you go, I wish more people ask this kind of question, because what you're demonstrating to them is that this question doesn't throw you off. But then you can even be like, the best part is I don't even have an answer, but let me tell you why I'm glad you asked, because I'm hearing that you're actually really thinking through this instead of just sort of listening while I give you some information and then leaving.
Mm-hmm.
But then you just say like, you're 3 steps ahead of me. Like,
yeah,
they do like that. Yeah.
And then you say, and then you ask them a question like, why is that question in your brain? What made you ask that? You know, why do you ask is the default reversal. Like when they go, well, how much, what's this onboarding going to be? Is this going to be really difficult for us? Why do you ask? You know, and get to the real objection underneath it. But these are some real-time tips and tricks for how to sell. But I hope that what you're seeing overall is like sieging them with information will not sell cyber. We all know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between educating over time, which is one of the things we have to do when they just don't get it, or wait, hang on, I don't get it. I already bought a firewall in 2004. I am cyber secure. You go, great. Listen, this is probably not the right time for this conversation. You know, you might need to educate. They might need to educate. They might need to learn through information. They might need to learn through experience. But these are some tools that if you're just selling at them, you're going to fall into the mix of every other MSP who's doing this. But if you can sell by asking meaningful questions that aren't predatory, and then you can sort of demonstrate that like it's supposed to cost more and that you're not afraid of the fact that it's going to cost more, already you're going to be in the 70th percentile of MSPs trying to sell cyber from those two moves.
Yes. Closing
I just want to
closing minutes here, Jesse. Why don't we do a round thoughts? I mean,
yeah. So this has been great, and I'm really happy that Brian got a chance to provide some real value to, I think, a lot of the MSPs watching, and hopefully you guys can take some of this away and practice it. The stream will be there so you can go back and take notes. But remember, all these things are based on the person or the organization that you're talking to. So I want to go back to those 3 tiers, right? If you're talking to a small business, it's probably the owner who's making the decision, and you have to understand what they want. If you're talking to a mid-market company, you might be dealing with the CEO or the CFO, or a lot of times decisions made by a committee in those organizations. So you have to make sure that all the people involved in the decision, you have to suss that out. So the last thing you want to do is sell to somebody and then find out they need approval from somebody else, or somebody else has some sort of weigh in on the structure. And then finally, in larger organizations, you're selling to maybe the CISO or director of IT, things like that. So make sure you're developing different approaches. This isn't a one size fits all for each type of those clients that you're going after. And then shrink that, like Brian said, using your ICP and your psychographics.
Dylan, thoughts?
I would say that the topic we have brought up, and Brian has been great at driving through this whole conversation, is empathy. You need to resonate with your client no matter who they are. You know, we need to be doing our research. You need to be able to connect with people, and you need to be understanding of the situation. And I think that is what's going to allow individuals like ourselves to actually be able to be appropriate with our own pipeline and timing as well. We've talked about this on the stream today. Sometimes people are in a position where they're in need, they might be in pain, but it's just not the appropriate time for implementation. And we need to be aware of this and work with them on that. It's not the time to give them a cold shoulder or anything else. This is maybe the time to take them under our wing, and that's what's going to build that trust, and that's what will build a brand in the market as well.
Awesome. I'll let Brian go last, but Brian, thanks for coming on. And I think the thing that's so surprising both times I've talked to you as someone who's really been successful in sales is how everything you're basically saying is radically the opposite or different, right? Like people would never say, let's tell them what the price is right off the bat, right? Like how many sales books say like, oh, never do that. Right? So, it's worth trying, right? Like everything you've basically put in front of us, right? Like let's go out and try that with our prospects. It might be a little different with current customers, and I think with current customers, Dylan, as you said, empathy just goes a really long way. So next week, Corey Munson, PC-Matic, we're going to be talking a little more technical, Jesse, with allow listing and what that entails, and there's allow listing for a lot of different things. Basically what you're allowed to and not allowed to do. But Brian, wrap it up. Love to know how we get more involved with you.
Yeah, for sure. What we should do is we should do a series, guys. Like we should just do a webinar on each like prospect profile, like how to sell cyber to the 15 to 50 user professional services, and like create a plan. That way we can get more specific on like how to drip, what series of messages to use, how frequently,
right?
How to measure, how to interview them. Because there's so much good stuff to cover today. I was like, man, I wish we could do all of it in an hour. But what I do is, and also I want to say, Dylan, I think I really appreciate some of what you were sharing, like creating timing, understanding timing is like not really up to you. And just because you want to sell something today doesn't mean that they should buy something today.
Yes.
Right. So just if you actually are empathetic, then you can go like, okay, just so we're not going to sell this today because it's the wrong time. What's an appropriate, what would be appropriate for us to do so that we're ready when you're ready? And then they go, well, let's buy it in September. And then you get a letter of intent. Like just by giving up the control and letting it work inside of their world and remembering your quota does not change their circumstance.
Correct.
Then all of a sudden you're all on the same team instead of you being against them. So Tim, you mentioned how we can get more involved. I have a sales assessment. If anybody's interested, feelgoodmsp.com. Just click the first button and we could do like this. We do a half an hour call and I ask you 7 questions about your sales environment. And then I give you 2 to 3 pieces of advice of exactly what I would do next. And of course, it's another great way to learn about the 90-day sales accelerator that we're helping MSPs book MRR every month. But I'm so glad to be here. I hope I get to come back in some future ones and we can just like pick little tiny holes of sales and go really, really deep. Yeah, Jesse, always a pleasure. All of you watching on YouTube and LinkedIn, thanks for everything. Reach out. Any questions for me, Brian at FeelGoodMSP or Brian at FeelGoodClose.com. You know, Tim will put his private cell phone number in the chat. You guys can call him day or night. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Anything we need to
All right.
do.
Thanks, everyone.
Tim?
Thank you. Enjoy the weekend. Cue the tech now.
Have a good weekend,
Later,
everyone.
guys.
See you guys.
All right. Bye.